So I listen to Jay-Z, but not all the time. Sometimes, well, let me say too much. This week, he uh he made some statements, made some comments that upon hearing them I immediately knew would make for a perfect conversation with my brother. So without too much further ado, let's turn to what Hove said and then let's get into what we think.
I think we got the video coming up too. Capitalist in Paris. Let's hear what O
Yeah,
said.
we're not gonna stop. This the hip hop is young. We still growing, and we're not falling for that technology, whatever you know this public puts out there now. That before was the American dream. Pull yourself out of bootstraps. You can make yourself. You can make it in America. All these lies that America told us our whole life. Um, and then when we start getting it, they try to lock us out of it. They start inventing words like capitalist and things like that. I mean, we've been called nigger and monkeys and shit. I don't care. Those words y'all come up with, y'all got to come with stronger words. When I say y'all, I'm not talking about you. The words they come up with, they got to come up with stronger words. We're not going to stop. We're not going to be tricked out of our position. Y'all locked us out. Y'all created a system that, doesn't include us. We said, fine. We went our ultimate route. We created this music. We did our thing. We hustled. We fucking killed ourselves to get to the space. And, now it's like, eat the rich and think, man, we're not stopping. So that evolution is, from us, we came from selling 7 records and selling records out our trunk and, no radio play. And I think Reasonable Doubt did 36,000 the first week or something like that. I may be adding a little to it. So we come from I come from Marcy Projects. My first house, 615 Lexington Avenue. My grandmother's house, 7 families lived. Like she has 7 kids. My mother and my parents and siblings lived in that house. My aunt Niecy lived in that house. Booty lived in that house. Butchie lived in the basement. I mean, this is one house. I went back to that house. I did an interview with Oprah, and I couldn't believe how small this house was. That all of us lived in that house. So again, that evolution that you speak of, it's just real and it's happening in real time, and I'm talking about it. And we're not going to stop, and we're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to trick us out of it and make us feel ashamed to be successful in a place that you know set up a system for us to be dead at 21. Um,
Alright. So you hit me up when we brought this forward. You're like, Zway, I think we disagree on this. And I'm still trying to find the line of where you believe we disagree because it there doesn't sound to be anything within that clip that goes against I think the fairness of how you know this the system that he discusses. So which points do you think that we disagree on?
So I think Jay choosing um, to compare being called a capitalist to being called a nigga, right? Um, and like the whole conversation about these names that they come up with to discourage us, um, I don't think that that applies to the term capitalist when that term and even critiques of capitalism aren't rooted in or predate, right, like the the struggle for black folks in America, right? So I don't think that when Hove says they're calling him a capitalist, I don't think it. I'm surprised because he's somebody that I hold in a very high regard, right? Um, and when he the way that he talks about being called a capitalist as a term they're using to tear him down, there are other critiques for capitalism that aren't related to him, right? and I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but I feel like I feel like it speaks to where Jay is and Jay's perspective, right? And I think it shows that Jay-Z is in a place where he believes that the ultimate win is succeeding in this system. Is finding a way to succeed in this system despite the obstacles placed in front of you. And I think while Jay-Z has motivated me in a lot of ways and a lot of points in my life, there's a point where we can actually zoom out even more and say maybe the game isn't a game that we should be playing. Maybe the best version of our life isn't to be successful at this game, right? Maybe it's to change the game. Maybe it's to decide we collectively don't agree with that, or the standards, or the benchmarks, or the situations that create that are why there were 7 people living in that household, right? Like, I believe that capitalism causes that. And so to look at finding a way to succeed in capitalism as the solution is something I disagree with. And it almost comes off as if Hove hasn't learned or read as much about that as I thought he might have.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that's because seeing capitalism or success in capitalism as the solution towards upbringing or towards uplifting the black community, you're saying the solution is not within capitalism. It's not within there. It's about finding alternatives. Is that what I'm getting correctly?
I mean, so my personal belief in what it will be most effective, I think, is an approach that is very critical of capitalism. I think it's totally fine, and I wouldn't really go too far in criticizing somebody who thinks that capitalism has a place in our creating the amount of power it would take to get us to a better position as a people. But I think when you dismiss people criticizing you as a capitalist as just trying to hold you back and not having valid criticisms about what capitalism is and does to people, then I think you're missing your position in society. And it surprises me to hear Jay speak about his position in society in a way that I don't think reflects a full understanding of, yeah, like that he's succeeded in a game that ain't for us, but that doesn't change that the game ain't for us. And it makes it very difficult to help all the people that look up to you. And I'm wondering where his concern for all those other people is in those statements.
You see, I guess I see the point of disagreement on that, right? Which is that if we say on this show all the time that when one person of color makes it, a lot of families eat. How many families eat off of a billionaire person of color, right? So if we're going back to like the verse that Jay just dropped on God did on Cal's album, which is dope. He says, "How many billionaires have come from Jay?" And so literally speaking directly to that, he says, "I count 4." You know, that's Ye, Reed, him, and then LeBron as well. So it's like that's 4 people. How many families are then fed from those 4 people that now own industries and whatever the case is, and are now ascending towards heights that we haven't been able to see within this system. And I think the reason it's important for us to participate in the system directly is because currently that's what's broken. You know, creating a whole new capitalistic order, that sounds great, but like if we're speaking about actual change, that's by seeing what's happening, where we're allowed to go into, where we're not allowed to go into, putting ourselves there, opening the door and having everybody come in and then, you know, benefit and profit from that too. So changing it from the inside as opposed to try and build a whole new building for it, because then I think I don't the market is the market. You know, the market is the market. Is kind of what I feel like, and it's always easier to change things from within the markets than trying to create something else.
I feel what you're saying, but I think whether you're if you want to change the market, whether you're inside the market or outside the market, you have to be able to criticize it, right? And I think I'm not talking about creating a new form of capitalism, or maybe I am, right? But I'm thinking about there are models for that. They exist, right? Like there are models for socialism. There are models that have worked horribly, and there are things that we can learn from that. Just like there are models of capitalism that have worked horribly, but there are models for socialism that we haven't tried yet. There are models for socialism that have worked in small places where they've been allowed to be implemented. But I think when we accept that capitalism is the default and and without true exploration of the alternatives decide that we're too scared to investigate it, I think we're doing whatever version of society we can live in a disservice, or even the best version of capitalism we could create a disservice. And I think there's a confusion here that smacks of like just defending capitalism that in a way that I think is contradictory to what it's done to people, right? So
This
I like.
is
Hold on. Because let me get this one bit out, right? Because I want to go to something you said. You said, how many billionaires has he been able to create, right? So if you count 3 or 4 billionaires that he's been able to create, that is incredible. And we do say that when one black person gets to eat, a lot of people get to eat. When one black person becomes successful, a lot of people get to eat. But how many more people get to eat if you're concerned with a different metric? What if instead of creating other billionaires, right, 4 other billionaires, you were concerned with creating 1 billion financially stable people?
my beef is that when he presents the solution in a contemporary manner, it's always met with, not always, but it's usually met with criticism. Jay did the cryptocurrency school, which in itself part of the programs was to be able to teach financial literacy in it. And how was that received, right? And now this is not um, this is out of touch. This does not fit. What is it that you're doing? When it's a lot of those things, a lot of efforts. I really do think a lot of efforts aren't publicized. We learn much later a lot of the work that Jay has done quietly, be it from buying Lil Wayne out of a contractual situation, bringing people back home from jail, that type of thing. I think when you're so spread out in the type of impact that you want to do, especially in a field that you dominate in and are good in, like the capitalist field, which he is, because he's hit a top that many don't go to, which requires a lot of skill as well. It's natural that I want everybody to be able to achieve this. It's not that you have to, oh, it's the only metric, but it's another metric that's added on to the full scope of impact. Quite frankly, it's a metric that I hold very dearly and one that I would like to be able to alternate, right? My fight being that we should be allowed to be the fullest versions of ourselves in a capitalistic society and still be able to make and still be able to benefit from it. I really do think that helping people should be the most valuable work. So how do we make impact look fly and also be able to be extremely lucrative at the same time? That way more people can get helped, you know? So I'm not saying I'm Jay-Z or nothing, but I definitely understand.
So let me ask you. So you're saying that you hope to be a billionaire one day, right?
That's not what I said.
Well, you're saying that that title is one that you hold in high regard of that as far in terms of an achievement. Am I understanding you correctly?
I mean that's objective. That's objective just by pure statistics of how many people become it and how many people don't.
It's objective that that's a something good to aspire to.
It's objective that is something notable to aspire for
Okay, yeah.
and special and very unique to achieve.
Would you want to be a billionaire?
I'm not focused on that. I'm not focused on that, but I would love to have the freedom of what that type of capital would give me in terms of how I'd be able to help people.
Do you think that capital does the most helping of people if you control the billion and decide where it goes, or if you control X amount of million and give the rest of it away to help people? If helping people is the ultimate goal.
I don't think giving away money is the best way to help people now.
Well, I don't mean I don't mean just giving it away, but I mean like, do you think that you, as a billionaire, being the person who privately owns all of that wealth and then decide what gets done with different amounts of it for different products and ventures, maximizes how many people it can help? Or do you think that if you were to keep certain amount of million, right? Say 10 million, 100 million for your life and to keep yourself financially stable, and then distributed the other 900 million to the other most knowledgeable people in the impact space across different sectors, housing, education, mental health, that those people would be able to maximize that money more so than you owning all of it.
It's like, I mean, it's always going to be subjective about how what's the best way to be able to deploy capital. Fun fact: today is the 21st anniversary. Hey, that's trippy. I was just watching. I was
That's
just
fire.
listening to the blueprint. Um, and you know, when we speak about cash distribution too, man, you know, billionaires really do get an unfair expectation when it comes towards what they're supposed to be giving. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gives more away than any individual organization, right? Like they give more away. They've also started the Billionaire Pledge, the first of its kind, where now they have about 9 billionaires who've pledged that when I die, 80% of my wealth is going completely towards impact, right? They started that pledge, but still at the same time, you could say, how come they haven't given up 900 million of the 13 billion that he owes? And that's where it becomes a bit unfair in terms of what it takes to be able to sustain a machine of that sort. So in order to be able to be at a place where you can help and distribute as much money as possible, there's a large capital machine that has to be able to support the structure for that to be able to keep on happening. And a lot of the times that looks like stock options, that looks like equity, that looks like, you know, government debt, that looks like a whole myriad of things. So being able to say, okay, I can give this away is the same thing like saying I could save more people by giving away the raft that I sailed in on to be able to help them.
I think that
But then
depends.
I die. And then who's going to row us back because no one knows how to swim?
Well, I think. Well. I mean, so our producer pulled up a quote from Fred Hampton earlier on capitalism, and mentioned to us even beforehand in pre-pro, right? Like, for Hove to be somebody who says, "I arrived on the day that Fred Hampton got assassinated." To clarify it further, right? For Fred Hampton to be somebody who was so insistent that the movement isn't about me. The movement isn't about what I can do for the people. My purpose is to help others realize how that they have the power to create the life that they want to live, right? And so in some ways it is always about putting it's how, and depending on how close to that you want to live, if that's a symbol that you identify with, how much of yourself are you willing to give away if you think it can help other people, right? And there's something to be said for what is my role within the movement, and how much do people need me, the young charismatic leader, and how much do I need them to realize that person in themselves, right? And regardless of if I'm here or not, right? Like, what is our obligation to other people, right? Like, if we exist in a system that isn't we all didn't have a hand in creating, is our ultimate goal to succeed in that system, or should we take seriously the maybe daunting task of creating a new system that does include everybody's voices? But if we decide that we will always be defensive and criticize whenever someone says, "Yeah, you won," but in a system that is hurting people, then I think we limit ourselves. To the point of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I think there are people that would say that what it took to amass that wealth, the people that were oppressed in mining for the resources that it took to make the microchips, and the people that worked hours and weren't paid, right? Like, I think they might say, well, it doesn't matter how much of that they give back. They haven't repaired the harm they did to amass that wealth. And that's the case against a lot of billionaires, right? Is that in order to reach that point, you have to have exploited some workforce at some point. That's one thing that's dope about Hove, is that Hove's model of reaching a billionaire, although it does certainly involve those capitalistic ventures, right? The fact that it was built from somebody who wasn't born with wealth and made money off of hip hop, right? That's something that's fire. But I think in the majority of cases, you're looking at a system of exploitation that allows people to get to a place where they can start to give back And in most cases, they're not giving back at any rate that starts to repair the harm they've done or even starts to make a dent in what they like. If I have the most, of course I should give the most. But what percentage of what I have am I giving? That's how I would measure it.
Yeah, I'm generally very hesitant on casting a blanket of all billionaires are evil. I really hold off on that, especially because it's not the truth. And when we say things like we're operating a system, why not create something that's different? I say it's exactly what Jay did with Rock Nation. That's exactly what Jay's trying to do with Tidal. That's exactly what Jay's trying to do. Tidal is like, listen, this is what the system is. Let's create our own version. We're gonna pay people a better way. We're gonna put in um, writer credits on it. We're gonna give equity away to the artists as they coming in, so each stream goes towards the artist. That is the attempt at that, right? And then we're gonna talk about alcohol, rappers. Y'all love booze. We'll keep advertising these people. They don't want us in the system. Let's do our own. Ace of Spades, here it is. Duce, here it is. It's our own, and we're drinking it. I created it. The equity splits are in this manner. Woo, woo, woo. And Jay is very forthcoming when it comes to the structures in which he put things up on. Now, our producer just showed me, I pulled up a Reddit thing where it said at Jay-Z's cannabis farm or company, people were paid just a hair above minimum wage, and people look, as a business owner right now, there are times where paying just above minimum wage is what the business can afford at that time. That's the reality of it. I don't think at all times it's just a matter of exploitation. Just because somebody has a billion doesn't mean that everyone that's within a firm of a company that is associated with him by equity has to now be the full recipient of the rest of that income. I don't think it works that way.
It doesn't work that way because capitalism, that's what capitalism is. Capitalism is saying that the person who owns the company gets to take the vast majority of the wealth that's created by that labor force. And an alternative system would say, well, let's take another look at how much each individual person puts into that labor force and how much they get out of it. And I think across a variety of different news stories, we've seen people at the top of that system taking in record profits while the people at the bottom of that system are struggling to survive. So maybe there's a way that we can reallocate to say, maybe these people are putting more in to the company, are more essential to it working than they're getting paid for. And maybe not from a we can't replace this person perspective, but from a human, what does this person deserve as a human for their hours in the day? What is human time worth? Right? Is it something that's close to minimum wage? I don't think so. Maybe we can think about a system where a black person owning a company that we can all go and buy is cool, but it's even cooler if that's collectively owned by all the people that work in the factory, right? Like we're not thinking big enough. I mess with Jay-Z heavy for all of the ways that within this system, he's tried to create opportunities for people. But I also think that we have to hold space for criticizing this system and taking a serious look at creating another system that includes all of those things that might be hard to imagine now, but that provide equity for people. And there are people that have been doing the work around that. Like Angela Davis has done some amazing work around socialism. Miriam Kaba has written some amazing work around mutual aid and how we can build collectives that support each other, right? There is research and there are mechanisms by which we can create those things. But I just think redistributing the wealth and the power, right? You have, last point I want to make on Hove. You have a private, unelected individual, right? And while he has done amazing things for black folks, that money and power has often made him a voice for black folks in positions where that has been to the detriment of black folks, i.e. Hove in the midst of the NFL having to grapple with their issues with race, Hove coming in and saying, nah, I'm doing a deal with the NFL as a billionaire. We passed kneeling. We done with that. You know what I mean? Like, that voice is too loud sometimes. And that was framed as an initiative that was supposed to help us and did nothing, right? And so that's
They
a part
got
of the
Dr.
issue,
Dre
too.
on the halftime show. Come
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
They got, but I mean, look, and maybe we can end on this note. And it's a good conversation. And I like how we got to the point. I understand your gripe with it, right? And I do get it. Um, from a numbers, if you're just looking at numbers, right, and just how um, cash flow, where it flows in the whole supply chain of things. Not every billionaire is an evil billionaire, and I think that's very important for us to be able to assume, because when we blanket a term like that, eat the rich and all that type of stuff, what we're doing is we're classifying a whole spectrum of value creation under one blanket, and it robs us the ability to be subjective and to really, find the points where we can be able to fix things. I don't think that criticism is fair to someone like Jay-Z, who has gone above and beyond in terms of social impact things, creating a school, getting people from jail, creating different alternative service providing options, against the system, even at a detriment at times, trying to be a trailblazer, trying to push people in, creating more black billionaires under his tutelage than anybody else. I don't think that's the right person to bring that terminology to. Clearly, this man has a very poignant agenda on being able to bring black people to the pinnacle of financial success. A very important goal. Some other black folks are doing it too. He's not the only one. But in this character, from the culture of hip hop, he's the first. And so, in order for the decisions to finally consider us within them, somebody has to sit at eye level with the decision makers. And a lot of the times, what allows you the chair to meet them at high level is paid through by high capital, acquiring high capital. So that's that. And quite frankly, man, that's something that I hope to be able to bring forth is, you know. Is give us the chance to be able to say, whenever we get into any room or any chair, to be like, nah, we've been here. We've been here before. We know what these stakes look like. We know what to look for. We know what to ask. We know what to avoid. We know that we belong in our fullest version of ourselves. So that's don't eat me when I come up with the B.
Hey, bro. First of all, I hope I never said Jay-Z was evil, because I don't believe that. But
You
I
heard
don't.
it here first, guys. Miles Xavier says Jay-Z still Illuminati.
Yes, the all the way out of context show. um, I don't think Hov is evil. I agree that maybe evil isn't even, I don't think, useful terminology for this conversation. But I think, me personally, I see capitalists as the triumphant winners of a game that maybe we shouldn't all be playing, right? And I agree with you that somebody, in order to make change, somebody has to sit eye to eye with the decision makers. But I hope that if you've climbed that mountain, right, that the people in those positions hold so much power. And I think it would be dope to be able to climb that mountain and to say, I was able to claw my way up with these grappling tools right here. And this is how anybody we all feel like we clawed our way up here, don't we? But maybe let's build stairs so that not only the most incredibly gifted grappling climbing specialists can reach a place that is powerful and beautiful and safe.
We
Shut
can
up,
go on
Hov.
that. We can go on that because I say, bro, even if everyone starts at the same place, no, we all wouldn't end up at the same place, especially in that game. Especially in that game, it is reserved for the best. It is. The pinnacle is reserved for the best and the hungry. That we can all start at the same place, but the pinnacle is reserved for the few and far between. And
Does it have to be?
the way that yes, it does.
In
Because
capitalism, it has to be.
no, it incentive of incentive of competition drives efficiency in products. So if there was no incentive to compete, then the quality of the products wouldn't make sense. But there's a lot to unpack, and we are getting the red light to keep beaming. Shout out to you for knowing that the whole conversation would be the one that would be the one that brings us to such a lengthy conversation. I feel like we could speak about this
No
for
doubt.
96 years.
No doubt. To affinity, right? Yeah. Yo, go listen to Reasonable Doubt, man. But also read some Miriam Kaba too.